Most bassists learn one bossa nova pattern, root, fifth, root, fifth. At the same time, when bassists attack repetition with a busy line, they lose the bossa nova feel. In both cases, they're missing the subtleties that can take a bossa nova line from boring to completely captivating. In this video, I'll show you 5 ways to do it. Let's start with the basic pattern we heard in the opening. Root on beat 1, fifth on beat 3 with the extra attacks on the and of 2 and and of 4. That pattern is the foundation, and it can carry you through a lot of tunes. The problem is that many players learn that pattern and treat it like a loop instead of a living bass line. When I first started playing jazz, bossa nova sat right in my comfort zone. Creating walking bass lines was hard, but bossa nova used straight 8s, only required the root and the fifth, and best of all, you just played the same thing over and over. Eventually though, repeating the same pattern started to feel limiting. My solution was to fill the line with all my chops. Before long, I was playing all over the song, but I wasn't playing bossa nova anymore, and I wasn't supporting the song. When I heard great jazz bassists like Ron Carter and Brazilian bass masters like Nelson Mata playing bossa nova, I realized that I was missing the whole point of the music. Before we add any new notes or rhythms, let's see how much variation we can create with the basic line itself. The first place that this can make a difference is where we actually start the line. The root on beat 1 can be played in a variety of octaves. From there, we can start to look at the fifth. We can move from the root up to a higher register on that fifth, or we can move down from the root to a lower register on the fifth. Once we get comfortable with these register choices, we can actually combine them to travel across the neck. The big consideration here is low end. When we're playing behind a melody or even throughout a solo, I like to keep a deep foundation, so I'll often stick to the lower octaves. The mid-range octaves are great for variation and color, but those higher octaves really stand out and can get in the way. So the third strategy would be something I'd use sparingly, perhaps at the end of a phrase or as a solo is building in excitement. We've already created quite a bit of variation here, and we haven't even changed the core line yet. The reality is that you don't need additional notes to create variations. When we do start to alter the rhythm, we don't want to move too far away from the original framework. So let's start with a simple variation that involves playing 2 quarter notes on beats 3 and 4. You can turn things around and do this in the first half of the measure too. Play 2 quarter notes on beats 1 and 2 while keeping the second half of the measure the same. Quarter notes straighten out the bossa nova groove, and this can be effective, but only when they appear momentarily. 4 or more quarter notes in a row alter the fundamental character of a bossa nova bass line, so I would reserve that sound for a deliberate break, a transition, or arranged moment. I think the quarter notes on beats 3 and 4 work well at the end of a section. They create forward motion into the next part of the song and clearly mark the boundary between the two sections. I think that quarter notes on beats 1 and 2 work best at the beginning of a new section. They create a firmer arrival into this new part of the song. We're not making huge changes yet. A simple rhythmic change can create emphasis, provided it doesn't flatten the groove. We just spent some time making basic variations to the rhythm. Now, let's play with the pitches. The Bossa Nova pattern that we started with uses 2 chord tones, the root and the fifth. But most jazz bossa harmony uses 7th chords, which gives us 2 more chord tones to work with, the 3rd and the 7th. So where can we add those notes without losing the harmonic foundation? For now, keep the root on every chord change. In most cases, keep the 5th on beat 3, at least until you hear a clear melodic reason to replace it. But we do have 2 attacks left in each measure, on the and of 2 and the and of 4. These are perfect spots to integrate the 3rd and 7th. They can also serve as transition points to get you from one chord to the next. This works especially well in a 2-5 progression. In terms of usage, I wouldn't use all 4 chord tones in a measure, at least not often. You run the risk of turning the line into an arpeggio exercise instead of a groove. We started altering the rhythm of Bossa Nova by straightening out the groove. Now let's go the opposite direction and make it more active and sometimes even syncopated. Let's start by splitting the first half of the measure into 8th notes. I tend to hear a burst of energy and some momentum from this rhythm. See what you think. If you don't want to insert that much energy into the line, but you need a little push, you could play a quarter note on beat 1 and then play 2 8th notes on beat 2. That would sound something like this. Then there's the time that you need some tension. In that case, you'll play an 8th note followed by a quarter note and then another 8th note, giving you this. And of course, it's important to remember that you can do all of these variations on the other side of the measure as well, starting on beat 3. When you play any of these more active rhythms, you want to have a reason. A quick burst of energy might help you build the rising dynamic in a song. The second rhythm might push you from an A section into a B section, or a syncopated figure might be a reaction to an intense moment behind a solo. These rhythms aren't there to make the line sound more advanced. They should signal a change that leads into a destination. We've played with the idea of integrating different chord tones, so let's take a minute to extend their uses and even add some chromatic passing tones. I'd still keep the root on the chord change, but now we can begin replacing the 5th with the 3rd or 7th when it helps create a longer melodic line. Here, there are 3 levels of the same connection. First, we'll use only chord tones. Then we'll add a scale tone. Finally, we'll add a chromatic approach. The 3rd or 7th can replace the 5th on beat 3 when it becomes part of a larger melodic connection. Let's take this line, for example, where we're playing a 2-5-1 in the key of C. Now, what if we took that same line and added some scalar notes into the mix? It might go something like this. We could even make this line more interesting with some chromatics to shape the line like this. This works because there's a destination. We're working from the D to the C. The chord tones outline the harmony, the scale tone smooths the movement, and the chromatic note increases the pull into the destination. They provide the forward motion that we need. The root on beat 1 and the fifth on beat 3 gives the pattern foundation. The spaces around those anchors give us room to create variation. And even when the line becomes more active, the root still defines the chord change. Using these ideas as simple guideposts can create more freedom within the pattern. Once you understand that freedom, the question is no longer, what am I going to play? It becomes when and where should I use it? That's where a simple cycle helps. Establish the groove, develop the line, and then return to the foundation. You can repeat that process several times through a tune, creating smaller waves of shape and direction without losing the groove. The goal is not to make every measure different. The goal is to make the line respond to the music. Now, let's put all 5 ideas into a real tune. I'm going to play a Bossa Nova bass line over the Jobim classic, The Girl from Ipanema. I'm not going to use every variation in every measure. I'm going to establish the groove, develop it with 1 or 2 ideas, and then return to the foundation before building again. You'll hear that process happen several times through the tune. I start with the basic pattern. Then I play 2 quarter notes in measure 8 to push us into the second A, where I settle back into the groove in a different register. Syncopation in measure 16 reflects the tension around a transition into the bridge. The basic groove continues in the bridge with some bursts of energy from pitch and rhythm changes. Then a rising melodic line in measures 29 through 32 gets us back into the basic groove for the last A. Listen for those smaller waves of shape and direction as I play through the tune. Repeatedly moved away from the basic pattern and then returned to it. Each return reset the groove so the next variation could create a new sense of shape and direction. The root and fifth establish the groove. Register lets you shape the line. Quarter notes create emphasis. Chord tones add color. Rhythmic activity gives you bursts of energy. Scale and chromatic notes create motion, but all of those notes need to lead somewhere. These ideas only work when they're placed with intention. Think of the process in 3 steps. Establish the groove, develop the line, return to simplicity. This is about moderation and support. If every measure is a variation, nothing feels like a variation. Now that you know how to vary the groove, watch this lesson on one-note samba to see how I build a complete bossa bass line over a real Jobim tune. I'm Chip Boaz. Live life, love music, play jazz.